The fall of the Berlin Wall marked a singular victory for democracy, with ripples across the globe.
Chinese troops ended at Tiananmen Square in the heart of Beijing.
The bravery of millions around the world who have fought tyranny and oppression since stand as a powerful testament that all people everywhere want the same thing: freedom and the chance to influence their own futures. Authoritarian leaders would have you believe that they're all-knowing and all-powerful and in total control of their citizens and their societies, and that they're on the march against democracy in the world. In fact, what keeps dictators up at night is their fear of their own people. IRI works with legislators to help enhance transparency and accountability. Effective parliamentary oversight is central to any democracy.
The good news is that IRI does that work every day, building civil society, making the case in other countries just how important democratic elections are.
Democracies, for all their faults, for all the polarization, for all the divisiveness, they have the extraordinary advantage of being more resilient, of being able to course correct, of being able to hold leaders accountable and make sure that what citizens care about is advanced as a matter of public policy. Our cause at IRI is to help make the dreams of accountable representative governance and political freedom a reality for people the world over. IRI ran a successful election observation mission to Tunisia. They know that observers from the United States, from Europe, from other countries coming in strengthens their democracy. We should realize that our democratic values are what make people all over the world want to live in more open societies.
In every person's heart, whether you're Chinese or American or Russian, you have that feeling, that desire for freedom and liberty.
Even now, the threat to democracy looms as large as ever. That's why we need democracy defenders who stand up to authoritarian systems, fight for political inclusion, and envision a better future for their country. As our 25-year chairman, Senator John McCain, once said, "Nothing in life is more liberating than to fight for a cause larger than yourself." Join us in this journey. Learn more about our work at iri.org. Good evening. I'm Dan Twining, president of the International Republican Institute. It's my pleasure to welcome you to IRI's 2020 Freedom Awards ceremony, where we've gathered virtually to celebrate champions of liberty. Thanks to all our friends and supporters for joining us tonight. Your commitment powers our mission of advancing democracy around the world. We really want to extend special thanks to our board of directors for your guidance, wisdom, and advocacy, especially our chairman, Senator Dan Sullivan, who you will hear from soon. Thanks to our incredible supporters in Congress for their principled bipartisan commitment to making democracy an indispensable component of American global leadership. Thanks to our friends at the State Department, the U.S. Agency for International Development, and the National Endowment for Democracy, as well as other partners who stand with us every day to advance the cause of political freedom around the world. Thanks to the corporate and individual sponsors of tonight's event who personify the private sector's commitment to freedom and free enterprise. We're humbled by your generous support for IRI's mission and for the cause of freedom globally. Every one of you joining us tonight helps make our work possible, and we're grateful to walk with you on the road to a more democratic world in which all people can live free from fear and all governments are answerable to their citizens. Freedom Awards an opportunity for us to pay tribute to people on the front lines of the fight for democracy. Sadly, this year, we lost one of the pioneers, one of the real founding fathers of our democracy community, IRI's longest serving president, Lorne Craner, who passed away in July. Lorne's belief in the inherent dignity and aspiration to freedom of all people everywhere remains IRI's guiding light. In honor of Lorne's service and commitment, we've created the Lorne Craner Memorial Fellowship Fund to support emerging democratic leaders. If you'd like to support this effort, please visit iri.org for details. Senator John McCain was chairman of IRI for 25 years. I'm very pleased to announce that we will soon be hosting the first of our John McCain Freedom Fellows. His spirit lives through these emerging young democracy champions from around the world, and he would be so proud of their commitment to a cause greater than themselves. Past year has been a challenging one. Under the cover of COVID, authoritarians from Nicaragua to China have used emergency powers to crush dissent and stifle their people's voice. Democracy is under immense strain. But at IRI and in this virtual room tonight, we are not discouraged. This is a gathering of optimists. As Senator McCain once said, courage is not the absence of fear, but the capacity to act despite our fears. We dedicate this evening to those brave men and women on the front lines who are taking action. Despite tremendous obstacles and at great personal risk, we've seen ordinary people around the world take to the streets to demand rights most of us take for granted. Tonight, we'll honor two movements facing down ruthless autocrats in their struggle for freedom: the people of Hong Kong and the people of Belarus. We will pay special tribute to three remarkable women who are leading the fight for democracy in Belarus, including the amazing Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who you'll be hearing from shortly. We'll also hear from the inspiring Hong Kong democracy activist Nathan Law. Highlight for many of us will be a bespoke musical performance by BOBI from Uganda. These speakers and honorees hail from very different places, but they are united by a common commitment to democratic values and by their extraordinary personal courage, which you will find as inspiring as I have. President Ronald Reagan, who founded our institute, famously said that democracy is not a fragile flower, but still it needs cultivating. Keeping democratic values front and center in America's response to the world takes leadership and conviction. Tonight, we honor a leader who's displayed those qualities. As he has put it, quote, democracy is the only system of government that honors human dignity and personal freedom and progress for mankind. We're proud to honor Secretary of State Mike Pompeo for his commitment to defend and enlarge the free world in an age of authoritarian assault. I hope you enjoy our program. While this is, of course, a private event, remarks are on the record, so please do feel free to share some of what you hear on Twitter if you feel so moved via the hashtag Freedom Award 2020. We're very pleased just to have all of you with us. Thanks for your incredible support for this cause that's so much bigger than all of us and that is timeless and enduring in really what is an everlasting struggle between freedom and tyranny. I'm very proud now to introduce really one of the great champions of that cause, the chairman of IRI, Senator Dan Sullivan.
Thank you for the great work that you are doing and your leadership for IRI. And all your commitment and steadfast courage on these important issues. On behalf of the IRI board, I would like to welcome all of you to the IRI 2020 Freedom Award ceremony. Now, clearly the ceremony looks a little different than it did last year. And as we are still all struggling with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has transformed all of our lives. As chairman of IRI, I have been very impressed and gratified on how IRI and the other institutes for democracy that we have under the National Endowment of Democracy have adjusted to the challenges of these times, this new normal, and continue to support our partners on the ground, strengthening democracy worldwide. It's certainly a cliche, but I think it's true. These programs are more important than ever. As you mentioned, Dan, the COVID-19 pandemic is straining the foundations of political systems, young and old, authoritarian and democratic. But democracies like ours have history to draw on. We know that giving voice to people to govern with their own consent can seem messy and disruptive at times, but we also know that disagreements ultimately lead to a better tomorrow of greater knowledge, compromise, and progress. We know this because it's played out in our own history time and time again, decade after decade, century after century, and it will play out once more, even during these challenging times for America. Other countries don't always have this history to draw on. They see democracies as unworkable. They see efficiencies in the authoritarian governments and authoritarian systems, the ability to act swiftly, the ability to lie and fool the people they govern. And this is one of our challenges. During this pandemic, we're seeing authoritarian regimes react as they often do, maliciously, with little regard for their own people. And we're seeing democracies, particularly developing democracies, struggle between the balance that they have with regard to the health emergency and the need to protect their own institutions and prevent the erosion of liberty. China's behavior in the past year in this regard has exceeded all expectations and the damage that can be wrought by unconstrained authoritarianism. The evidence suggests that the pandemic could almost certainly have been contained had Chinese Communist Party authorities not lied to the international community, suppressed vital information, and taken aggressive steps to prevent the spread of the pandemic. This behavior is inextricably linked to the nature of the regime itself, which has as its own survival the #1 goal for the Chinese Communist Party. It's always important to remember that. I want to mention one other thing that we're seeing with regard to our own challenges as we look at the pandemic. As I mentioned, there are systems and people who are questioning how rapidly, how effectively, how efficiently democracies can respond. And I think it's important to recognize this as an important issue. I want to quote President Truman in a quote that I think is one of the most underrated quotes, so underrated that I quoted it last year in my remarks. But I think that it's so important for all of us to realize that in our history, in our own history, in the history of the world, when these kind of challenges approach, when these kind of challenges present themselves, to be able to look inside and understand our own strengths. Here's a quote from President Truman that he gave on his way back from the Potsdam Conference in 1945. He said, quote, "This war has shown that we have tremendous resources to make all the materials for war. It has shown us that we have skillful workers and managers and able generals and a brave people capable of bearing arms. All these things," he said, "we knew before. The new thing, the thing which we had not known, the thing which we have learned now and we should never forget is this, that a society of self-governing men and women is more powerful, more enduring, more creative than any other kind of society, however disciplined, however centralized. We now know that the basic proposition of the worth and dignity of man is not a sentimental aspiration or a vain hope or a piece of rhetoric. It is the strongest, most creative force present in the world." President Truman was right, of course, and indeed the creative power of American democracy has done more to liberate men and women across the globe from tyranny and oppression, hundreds of millions of people, when you look at our history, than any other force in human history. We need to remember that. We at IRI are inspired every single day by the commitment to democracy we see from our partners on the ground, from leading protest movements to the day-to-day work of local government, from strengthening electoral integrity to amplifying the voices of marginalized communities. We're proud to walk alongside our partners in nearly 100 countries around the world. We couldn't do any of this work without all of your support, and we want to thank you again. And we couldn't do it without the bipartisan support of our champions in Congress. And it is a strong bipartisan group of senators and congressmen who support this, including my fellow board members, Senators Joni Ernst, Lindsey Graham, Mitt Romney, Tom Cotton, and Marco Rubio, and Congresswoman Kay Granger. For all the talk about our polarized politics, I am incredibly proud and see it on a daily basis, the bipartisan work for our support, including, at the end of last year, significant funding for the National Endowment for Democracy and the institutes that support NED. And I want to thank all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for their support. But this support has to be made by real leaders who put democracy at the heart of American engagement in the world and who recognize that American leadership must be underpinned by our most sacred democratic values. Which brings me to our first honoree of the evening, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Since he became the Secretary of State in 2018, Secretary Pompeo, and throughout his entire public life before that, has been a stalwart champion of American values and human freedom. From his advocacy on behalf of the Venezuelan people to his recognition of the threat posed by the advancement of the confrontational Chinese party, Secretary Pompeo has advanced the case of global leadership and exemplified the mission and values of the International Republican Institute. He's also a veteran and had served in the US Army for many years, protecting freedom of not just the United States, but of our allies abroad. He has led innovation and revitalization in American diplomacy, ensuring that in the grand competition between liberty and tyranny, America is not on the sidelines, but leading. Autocrats know that they have a determined foe, and democracy fighters know they have an unshakable friend. He's also my friend, and I'm honored that he is here tonight. The world is more free, safe, and prosperous as a result of his leadership. Mr. Secretary, as you probably know, the Freedom Award has a long and distinguished number of recipients. At the beginning of this program, you saw a number of them. Colin Powell, President Reagan, Secretary Shultz, Secretary Baker, Secretary Rice, George W. Bush, Secretary Kissinger, Secretary Mattis. Last year, we renamed the Freedom Award to be in honor of one of our great freedom fighters, a good friend of yours and mine and mentor, Senator John McCain. It is now called the John S. McCain Freedom Award. And for your remarkable contribution to the advancement of democracy and human liberty, it is my honor to present IRI's 2020 John S. McCain Freedom Award to Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State of the United States of America. Mr. Secretary.
Continues through his family today. And the world is made freer by the things that he did. Organizations like RI were a dream when in 1982, President Reagan declared his objective at Westminster to foster the infrastructure of democracy. This is part of it. IRI was started just a year after that, and since then, you at IRI have advanced the cause of democracy on almost every continent. You've been the home of men and women who've upheld America's highest ideals of public service, like the late, great Lauren Craner, whose leadership helped build this institute and whose passing we all mourned earlier in 2020. Look, I'm also proud that my team here at the State Department, 75,000 strong, has a number of IRI alums, including my Deputy Secretary, Steve Began, and Ambassador Curry. I will tell you that they would also be proud that today's award is shared with heroes on freedom's front lines, like the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement and the Belarus pro-democracy movement. Your support at IRI for them embodies your lodestar principle that no human being, none, wishes to live their life with the jackboot of authoritarianism on their neck. And, you know, these brave people know, too, that Ronald Reagan was correct, that man's instinctive desire for freedom and self-determination surfaces again and again. I've seen it in my now almost 4 years serving in this administration. We've seen it in Belarus, we've seen it in Venezuela, we've seen it in Lebanon, we've seen it in Iran, we've seen it in Iraq, and in countless places, large and small. And these people bear witness to the human desire for freedom. We also get a chance to see it in 12 courageous Hong Kongers who, on August 23rd, climbed in a speedboat and who attempted to escape to freedom. Their destination, a democratic Taiwan, 400 miles away. They made it about the length of a marathon, about 26 miles. They reportedly were just outside of Hong Kong's territorial waters before the security services of the Chinese Communist Party scooped them up. These 12, the Hong Kong 12, are being held incommunicado by CCP authorities on the mainland as we sit here this evening. They've been denied counsel, and they have not been allowed to speak. But they've committed no crime. They simply believe they are worthy of freedom and the unalienable rights that are due to each and every person. They aren't alone in that belief, but America stands with them and all the others. And I know that the International Republican Institute stands with them too, and I know they're encouraged by that. Look, it's why the CCP sanctioned you all. It sanctioned IRI last December, and Dan, you got it just about 60 days later, so good on you. Look, those sanctions are in many respects a badge of honor, because tonight and every day, we simply honor those seeking their own freedom. If we don't do it, if we don't lead in America, no one's going to. It's on us, and that's both a burden and an enormous opportunity. We know it is a fundamental insight of America's first patriots. They understood America's special place and its special responsibility. I hear a lot of talk about America being exceptional, and I hear some who suggest otherwise. I must say, that exceptionalness, I believe in deeply. It's because of our wisdom set upon our founders' ideas, who made it possible in the new world for mankind to move beyond tyranny of the old world. Our nation is rooted in the courage to declare and fight for the truth that all men are indeed created equal, and that they, each of them, are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our purpose in America, and I remind my team at the State Department of this all the time, our purpose is built on the idea that every human being is made in the image of God. Even those do not carry His grace in their heart. Here, the people are sovereign, and their rights come before the state. A little over a year ago, I formed a commission. I know they can be tiresome, these commissions, but I felt like it was really important. I formed a commission led by a woman named Professor Marianne Clendon to take a look at unalienable rights. It sparked a lot of controversy. That's a vigorous democracy at work, for sure. But my hope was simple: to help reground America's foreign policy in our nation's first principles. It's now a report. I hope everyone will get a chance to read it. It takes about half hour to wind one's way through. And the commission found that the unalienable rights are inseparable from the humanity of every person. It found that the American spirit Our American spirit is based on the fundamental dignity, the rule of law, and natural equality. And, it's easy to forget that sometimes. To forget the power of the founding truth is to forget the source of America's goodness and our strength and the reason we are so respected around the world. I saw this in my career. You mentioned I was an Army guy and you were a Marine, Senator. When I was a young armor officer serving in West Germany, everyone remembers the Berlin Wall. I served in a place called Binlock, not far from a little town called Moldleroy. Moldleroy had a wall right down the center of it, families that had been divided on both sides of that wall. And just before both of those walls came down, I was reassigned, about 2 weeks before that. And I remember calling back to a couple of my lieutenant buddies and saying, what's it look like? How does it feel? We'd been patrolling this very wall for years and years and years. And I remember one of them, he said, it's people, they're leaving everything behind. They want to get out. They're not sure how long this is going to last. They're taking just what they can carry in their little cars. And he said, foot traffic too was high and fast. And then he said something profound. He said, and it's moving in one direction, in the direction of freedom. There was no one crossing when that wall came down from west to east, but everybody who wanted just a taste, just an opportunity, a chance to reunite on that freedom side of the wall. It was pretty cool. I got a chance to go back there last year as a Secretary of State. I was in Moldleroy with my foreign minister counterpart in Germany. Parts of the barrier 3 decades ago had been left up as a monument. Observation towers, barbed wire. There were reminders as I walked it of the pernicious kind of evil that denies freedoms, the very freedoms that make each of us so human. We see that evil now, keeping people down in the deserts of Xinjiang, in the plains and peaks of Tibet, in the urban streets of Hong Kong, and everywhere behind the Great Firewall. Let me spend just a minute talking about communist China. I've spent a lot of time talking about that over the past months. The predations against the Chinese people, the neighbors in the world, are serious, and we must confront them. The CCP has put more than 1 million innocent people in internment camps where they perform slave labor. It's perpetrated an unrelenting war on faith, even reportedly forcing abortions and sterilizations. This is the stain of the century that tells us the true nature of this regime. And we shouldn't forget every place between Hong Kong on the coast and the far-flung Xinjiang, some 1.4 billion people. They're denied basic freedoms of speech, assembly, of association, the press, every other way that human beings choose their own future. The good news is America's rising to this challenge, and it's doing so, Senator, as you described earlier, in a bipartisan way. We've seen and sanctioned CCP officials perpetrating their abuses based on laws passed with enormously overwhelming bipartisan votes in the House and the Senate. State departments issued advisories to American businesses so that they know the risks of working with Chinese state-owned enterprises. We're strengthening our military primacy and fortifying a free and open Indo-Pacific alongside friends and allies. I was just a week ago today in Japan, speaking with our regional partners. And then before that, a week, I was at the Vatican to discuss the urgent need for the church's moral witness inside of China. The early years of the CCP and Mao's rise were shaped by Stalin, who once dismissed the power of faith, asking, how many divisions does the Pope have? Pope John Paul II answered that when he went to Warsaw, drawing hundreds of thousands of Poles to the streets for Mass. There wasn't a tank division anywhere that could stop them. That spirit, the spirit of free people, not the vulgar materialism and repression of communism, is eternal, universal, and irrepressible. And it was because of the West's moral clarity and leadership, combined with the unbeatable bravery of those behind the Iron Curtain, that the Soviet Union ultimately collapsed. There may be today, maybe 100 million or more Christians in China seeking religious freedom, as well as millions of Falun Gong devotees, Muslims, Buddhists, and other people of faith. They're looking to sources far higher than the volumes of Xi Jinping's thought or Mao's little red book to guide their lives. They need us. They need the same moral witness today from governments, from religious leaders, from civil society groups that made freedom prevail in the past, and from places like IRI. They need your institution and those like it to stand up for the not yet free and foster institutions and infrastructure of democracy. As past and present honorees have shown, our actions have to be strong and they must follow our words. That means we will work with our European allies, calling for a free and fair election that respects the wishes of the Belarusian people. That means supporting the Iranian people and applying a maximum pressure campaign to deny the #1 state sponsor of terrorism resources to permit them to engage in their repression. It means helping the Venezuelan people with humanitarian aid and recognizing that Juan Guaido is the legitimate president, not Maduro and his cronies. It means, too, good works. It means making places like the Middle East more peaceful through the Abraham Accords and working with all of our regional partners, especially our democratic ally, Israel. And it means, too, telling hard truths and strengthening NATO. Truth to our allies that security requires them to shoulder the responsibilities of freedom around the world, just as we're doing here tonight. Look, America's founding principles, our form of government, and our spirit of liberty perfectly suit us to the task in every generation to secure freedom. We must do this. We must do this wherever man's instinctive desire for freedom surfaces, and there are so many places today. Today, we're too being tested, again, to see whether our great nation still measures up to the best traditions and its highest ideals. I'm very confident that it will. There's so much more to discuss, but I'm going to leave it to you, Dan, to get the conversation there. Thank you again to IRI for this honor, and congratulations to my co-honorees tonight as well. I know you will all keep up the fight. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for those personal remarks. Thanks for that call to action. Thanks for that reminder of what we need to do in the world as Americans, not as Republicans or Democratic or independents, but as Americans. And the fact that we have allies all over the world who want to be free and enjoy the dignity and rights that we take for granted. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your call to defend and enlarge the free world. We're very grateful to you, and congratulations on this honor. It's our honor to have you. I'd like now to turn the floor over to Senator Rick Scott. He's been a vocal supporter of democracy and human rights in the Senate. He's been a champion of the Venezuelan people who are fighting to defend their life and liberty, as well as a strong defender of the rights and freedoms of the people of Hong Kong. He will present this year's Freedom Award to the people of Hong Kong and will introduce Nathan Law to give us all an update on this organic people power movement.
Hi, I'm Senator Rick Scott. I'm honored to join you for the 2020 Freedom Award celebration. I want to thank Secretary Pompeo for his remarks and for his tireless efforts to fight for freedom and democracy around the globe. Today's recipients are beyond deserving of this award. The brave people of Hong Kong are an inspiration in the fight for freedom and democracy. And they have sent a powerful message to Communist China that they will not back down or be silenced. The world is watching, and we must stand together to present a unified front against Communist China's aggression. And the United States will always support fighters like the people of Hong Kong to rise up against injustice and fight for freedom. Here to speak more on the brave Hong Kongers that are on the front lines in the fight for democracy is pro-democracy activist and former Legislative Council member Nathan Law.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nathan Law from Hong Kong. First of all, I'm very honored to be invited by IRI to give a speech in this Freedom Award ceremony. And for me, it means a lot because I think it's very important for now, more than ever, for Hong Kong people to be seen by the world and to have your attention in order to support our cause and our struggle towards freedom. I'm Nathan. I participated in political activism when I was 21 in 2014. I was the student leader of the umbrella movement. Peaceful civil disobedience actions took place in the center of Hong Kong in the fight for democratic election. And after that, I founded Demosisto with my fellow activist Joshua Wong, and became the youngest ever elected parliamentarian in Hong Kong at the age of 23 in 2016. After I served the council for almost a year, I was unseated by the Beijing government, and they basically did it by distorting our local system and apply their restriction retrospectively to my condition, and then they kick out people like me that they don't like. A month after I left the council, I was jailed because of my peaceful participation in the umbrella movement. So when the time goes on, 3 months ago, when Hong Kong was implemented the national security law directly from Beijing, I had to flee Hong Kong, and now I am based in London to continue my international advocacy work. For me, it's important to continue my voice as the voice of Hong Kong people, and to appeal to the international community to fight for your support. Because for Hong Kong, our struggle has been more than 30 years. 30 years ago, when Hong Kong was negotiating its future after 1997, when Hong Kong was handed back to China by the British government, we were so worried about living under the communist ruling. We thought that that would mean the demolition of our freedom and our democratic accountability, and also that would be a doomsday for capitalist way of life. But after that, the Chinese government promised Hong Kong people that we will enjoy one country, two system, which we preserve our autonomy. We have a different system from the one in mainland China. We have different rule of law, legal system, and well, the system to govern ourselves. Also democracy. Democracy is the best way to guarantee that we Hong Kong people are protected by the human rights and freedom. But at the end of the day, Beijing have never committed into their promises. Rather, they turn Hong Kong backward and to make it less and less free, and impose more and more control and heavy-handed policies in Hong Kong. And the newly implemented national security law is the most vivid case. Under the law, anyone that the Communist Party doesn't like, they could have a cook-up case on you, saying that you're committing acts of treason or secessions or colluding with foreign forces, and put you in jail for years. And the maximum penalty would be lifelong sentencing or being extradited back to China. There are already individuals who are arrested under the national security law because they chant certain slogan or display certain leaflets, and that is such a gross violation to our basic human rights and the loss of our freedom of expression. So for now, other than local protest, the international pressure become more and more important. The world has to come up with a new consensus towards China that it is not going to democratize and be free by themselves. We have to hold them accountable by implementing concrete measures, by showing them that if they continue their human rights violation in their country, they will suffer from consequences, and there will be actions from the Western democracies, no matter it's individual sanctionings on the officials who are accountable for the human rights violation, or sanctions or highest scrutiny of the Chinese enterprise in our country. It's important that we realize the fight for Hong Kong people is not just for Hong Kong people or Chinese people or the Uyghurs in the concentration camp, but it's for the world, because we realize that the expansionist authoritarianism from China could infiltrate into our democracies, and they are much more equipped than the previous communist regime in the last century, and it posed really serious threat to democracy, and they tried to infiltrate and to discredit and dismantle democracy from inside out. So we have to be very aware of this threat, and we have to do it multilaterally and assertively. So I appeal to the international community and also international NGOs that you support our freedom movement, and we all freedom-loving people should stand together and to fight authoritarianism. and to safeguard democratic values together.
That was a very moving statement. Are you supposed to be speaking now, Mr. President?
Madam Board Member, I'm just going to introduce you. I'm going to thank Nathan for his courage and stirring, for their brave continued resistance, which has exposed for the world the repressive and hollow nature of the CCP regime that considers people like Nathan Law and other peaceful activists who simply want their rights to be respected, somehow considers them a grave national security threat. So look, we know around the world, ordinary people are standing up to demand change. And we look forward to hearing from you, Connie Newman, about our next guest. But I'm very pleased to introduce the IRI Board's Connie Newman, who among many, many other great qualities was Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs and just a great leader and mentor to many of us. Connie.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like join this evening IRI's 2020 Freedom Award to introduce a very special performer, a democracy advocate. He's a member of parliament, a musician, Bobi Wine from Uganda. I'd like to just take a minute though to share what I know about the country that relates to him and explains him in many regards. Uganda is a country of contradictions. At the beginning of the 21st century, a popularly elected civilian government ruled Uganda. The Ugandan leadership in the 1990s addressed the problems of HIV/AIDS far ahead of many other countries on that continent. Today, 87% of the youth are reported to be literate. On the other hand, Uganda is a country where there are complaints that the opposition and the press have been suppressed. That's all relevant, and the reason I mention it, because it helps you understand the performing artist, Bobi Wine. His path to politics has been unconventional. Over the past 2 decades, he rose to prominence as one of the most popular performers in the East African music scene, writing songs that express the Ugandan people's yearning for freedom and justice. Despite his music's engagement with political issues, Bobi Wine preferred to use his songs as what he described as a form of peaceful protest, but declined to enter the political fray directly. In 2017, he found that he could no longer remain on the political sidelines as the political environment became less open to dissent, and he decided to stand for office. It was then that Bobi Wine won a parliamentary seat with, get this, 70% of the vote, and becoming a voice for Uganda's forgotten citizens. In just a few years, Bobi Wine came to the forefront of national politics and is running for president. It's important to note, this is very important, I want to repeat how important it is, that IRI works with parties and politicians from across the political spectrum and does not endorse any particular candidate or party competing in elections anywhere in the world. Importantly, our reason for having Bobi Wine as a performer tonight is because of his commitment to democratic principles. Therefore, we are privileged to have him join us tonight to treat us to a very special musical performance. Ladies and gentlemen, Bobi Wine.
This is a message to the world, expressing what's exactly happening in Uganda. We are living in a time similar to the one of slave trade. This oppression is worse than apartheid. The gun is the master and the citizens slave. The pearl of Africa is bleeding. Question, what was the purpose of the liberation when we can't have a peaceful transition? What was the purpose of the constitution when the government disrespect the constitution? Where is my freedom of expression when you charge me because of my expression? See what you're doing to our nation. What are you teaching the future generation? See our leaders become misleaders, and see our mentors become tormentors. Freedom fighters become dictators. They look at the youth and say we are detractors. We are fighting for freedom. Sing along, sing along. We are fighting for freedom. Sing along, whoa. We are fighting for freedom. Yaga yo, yaga yaga yo. We are fighting for freedom. Ha. Dear all, my name is Chagulanyi Sentamu Robert, also known as Bobby Wine. I'm a musical artist, I'm a social activist, and I'm also a member of parliament in Uganda. For the past 3 years, I have been leading the People Power Movement, a pro-democracy political movement in Uganda, championing the struggle to liberate our country from a 35-year-old dictatorship under General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. We are fighting for freedom. I'm very delighted to join all of you tonight on such a wonderful event when the International Republican Institute pays tribute to individuals and movements that are fighting back against authoritarians across the globe. We are fighting for freedom. It is an extraordinary honor for me to be part of this event and witness the recognition of fellow activists who are speaking for democracy in this age when the forces of tyranny are all out. But still we are fighting for freedom. Yaga yo, yaga yaga yo. We are fighting for freedom. In Uganda, the young people are saying no to a regime which is simply interested in keeping power and not the plight of the people. We are fighting against a military regime which spends taxpayers' money and funds from friends abroad to buy military equipment used to crush dissent. We are fighting to restore the dignity of our people, the people of Uganda, so that the children stop studying from under trees, and so that Ugandans who are poor can at least access the basic health care. Sing along, sing along. We are fighting for freedom. Yes, we are struggling to put an end to corruption, to tribalism, to the torture, to the imprisonment of political opponents. I say we are fighting for freedom. For several years, I was a musician, and indeed I did not care so much about the politics, but some events happened to me and some people around me which caused me to realize that the personal comfort I was enjoying was indeed vain, for as long as the majority of the people of Uganda were not free. So when I decided to join active politics, the regime, scared of an uprising, blocked all my concerts and imprisoned and tortured me. And for 2 years now, I'm not even able to have a concert in my country. My comrades are facing numerous trumped-up charges, including that of annoying the president. In fact, I'm facing the same charges too. But despite all the persecution and all the repression, we are not giving up. But as we fight for freedom, We know that we cannot do this alone, especially given the ferocious nature of the regime that we are up against. So I call upon all of you friends to stand with the people of Uganda in this struggle for liberation and life. Do not tire calling out on the regime to stop brutalizing our people. We are grateful to some targeted sanctions against some of the corrupt and the brutal regime operatives. And we hope that in the coming months, more of those brutal officials who maim, torture, and kill the citizens will also be sanctioned. We have an election coming up in the next 3 months, in which I'm offering myself as a presidential candidate. Well, the regime has already showed every intention to rig the polls, just like it has done in the past. So any help that you offer us to stop the regime in its tracks will be very much appreciated, so that the voice of the people of Uganda is heard loud and clear. And finally, friends, let me pay tribute to the IRI and other international civil society organizations that are operating in Uganda to foster democratic rule. We thank you. The work you do is of important significance. So my prayer is that you intensify it. We are counting on the people of Uganda and of course our friends abroad to help in creating a new country where all the citizens of Uganda, no matter the age, no matter the gender, no matter the tribe, all live a dignified life in their country, Uganda. I thank you. People power, our power. Our power, people power. We are fighting for freedom. Yaga yo, yaga yaga yo. We are fighting for freedom.
Thank you, Mr. Wine, for that passionate call to action and that amazing performance with which nothing I am about to say can compete. Thank you. It's now my honor to introduce one of the Senate's fiercest defenders of global freedom and values-driven foreign policy, a great champion, IRI board member, Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator Graham was a close friend, ally, and travel companion of our late chairman, John McCain. Like Senator McCain, he never shied away from calling out dictators and tyrants abroad, nor from ensuring that our own national security institutions have a clear mandate from the Congress to empower and lift up champions of freedom. Senator Graham will introduce our next Freedom Award honoree, who's an example of the kind of democracy champion that the Western world must seek to empower. Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, leader of Belarus's pro-democracy movement. We're so proud to have her accept the Freedom Award on behalf of herself, Maria Kolesnikova and Veronika Tsepkalo, and the people of Belarus. Now here's Senator Graham.
Hello, everybody. Senator Lindsey Graham here. I'm sorry we can't be in person. To my friends at the International Republican Institute, boy, did you choose wisely this year. This year's nominee is an incredible woman, the most deserving person in the world for this John McCain Award. If John were alive, he'd be cheering you on. Ms. Tikhanovskaya, I hope I got your name right. What you're doing is inspiring us all, standing up to oppression in Belarus, long-standing corruption. You've inspired your nation, you've inspired the world. You're so deserving of this award, and the fruits of your labor are coming. This dictatorship will fall, and in a matter of time, and it's just time, the people of Belarus will know freedom because of you and all of those who've been working on your behalf. God bless, enjoy this evening, and I can't think of a more deserving award nominee than you.
Your Excellencies, Ladies and gentlemen, on the behalf of our wonderful women and my friends Maria Kolesnikova, Veronika Tsepkalo, and myself, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, let me thank you for this IRI Freedom Award. We are honored and grateful for it. Our trio happened to be at the right place at the right time, and for many we became the symbol of change. But nothing of this would have been possible without the Belarusian people. It's their daily courage, their determination for change, their unity, which gives strength to this symbol. The Belarusian regime is one of the first ones of the Romanian dictatorship in our region to openly and violently turn against their women. It's unfortunately the only way this regime knows how to acknowledge that somebody is an equal rival. The regime has in the same way acknowledged students, miners, factory workers, shop assistants, bikers, IT companies, firemen and children as their equal rival by turning against them with an intention to torture. This is not the kind of acknowledgement we want and not the kind of acknowledgement we are striving for. Which is why I want to thank our friends for recognizing us as freedom fighters and as equals in the entirely different way. I will be speaking about women, but not because they are more important or because they are victims, but because they are equal. As I speak about them, I do not forget for a second every person who is fighting for freedom in Belarus, regardless of their gender, age, or occupation. We will overcome. The peaceful protest in Belarus indeed has a woman's face. Woman's face of love and care for Belarus and its people. Woman's face for peaceful and secure future for our children. We women are someone's mothers, daughters, wives, friends. We women are the majority of Belarusian nation, and despite our differences, education, generation, income are saying loud and clear, violence must stop. And the peaceful transition to free Belarus must start. It's our duty and the only way forward. We women know that freedom cannot be taken for granted and are ready to fight for it, understanding that this might come at the cost. Let me give you just a couple of examples of this. Maria Kolesnikova, who teared her own passport to not to be deported from the country, got jailed. Mediator Lilia Vlasova, who joined the Coordination Council to solve political crisis, got arrested. Journalist Natalia Lyubnevskaya, who covered the protest, was shot by riot police. Famous basketball player Elena Levchenko, who supported the protests against the regime and got jailed. The 13-year-old girl Anastasia in Grodno, who decided to join the protest, detained. Political scientist and academic Olga Shpraga participated in a peaceful protest, detained. Alexandra Filipenko participated in a peaceful demonstration in Minsk, shot into the leg. Pensioner Nina Baginskaya, courageously and continuously defending the white, red, white flag, was detained. There are hundreds and thousands of names of unprecedented bravery of Belarusian women. Those who covered young men to save them from detention or beatings. There are thousands more who are worrying every day about their sons, brothers, and husbands. Women are at the front line of the protests in Belarus. Daily repressions, intimidation, and strangers in masks cannot stop the desire for freedom. It is a paradox, but even if you are put to jail, you can remain free. Some might steal the physical freedom, but can't steal freedom of thoughts and freedom of conscience. A spirit can't be closed behind bars. Nor can the symbol. This year, Belarus understood what freedom means. We women were an essential part of this process. After 2020, Belarus will never forget the value of freedom. It's hard to get freedom, but very easy to lose it. I appeal to all of you in this audience, intellectuals, foreign policy makers, international NGOs like IRI, always stand for freedom and protect it whenever it's under threat. This award belongs to every brave woman of Belarus. Thank you, IRI, for this recognition, and all of you for your solidarity with Belarus and support for this fight for freedom.
Thank you, Ms. Tikhanovskaya, for your remarks, and to your fellow activists, Maria Kolesnikova and Veronika Tsepkalo. Really all the brave Belarusians who've taken to the streets at great risk in pursuit of democratic freedoms. Your defiance and courage in the face of authoritarian brutality are remarkable and truly inspiring to all of us. Okay, for the last word, we're going to turn things over to IRI board member Senator Mitt Romney. Very honored to do that. He began sounding the alarm about resurgent great power competition with the likes of Russia and China at a time when few were paying careful attention. His powerful advocacy reminds us that the fight for freedom is truly global, that the stakes are high, and that we're in a competition not simply of military might or diplomatic influence, but of fundamental political systems.
Good evening. I'm sorry that I'm unable to join you in person, but I wanted to offer my sincere congratulations to Secretary Pompeo, to the people of Hong Kong, and to the leaders of the Belarus democracy movement for being honored with the Freedom Award. You join an esteemed list of past award recipients, and your contributions to the advancement of democracy and human liberty around the world are extraordinarily impressive. And so, with authoritarianism on the rise, IRI is critical to the promotion of freedom and democracy across the globe. Recent events in Belarus highlight that no continent is immune from authoritarian influence, and we must remain committed to the realization of freedom everywhere. Your work on the ground to connect citizens with their governments, to guide politicians to be responsive to citizens, and to motivate people to engage in the political process is perhaps the most effective way we can promote American ideals and values. Free and fair elections, individual freedoms and liberties, a free press, these are values that can often be taken for granted. But we have to remember that in countries like Russia and China, Iran, North Korea, these are foreign concepts. An authoritarian China is perhaps the greatest single challenge to the free world as we confront the 21st century together. It's no secret that China is on a quest to become the global power, economically, geopolitically, militarily. After 70 years in power, the Chinese Communist Party continues a relentless campaign of brutal repression, censorship, seizing waters that don't belong to it, and openly flouting global trade rules. China has continued its record of human rights abuses, particularly the use of violence against protesters in Hong Kong, and the internment and abuses of the Uyghur people. Just as concerning is that China is aggressively exporting its brand of authoritarianism to regimes around the world, as the Chinese Communist Party seeks to reshape international rules and norms to accommodate its interests. The Communist Party is also exporting its technology to other authoritarian governments to better allow those dictators to control their people and strip away their freedoms. IRI has been on the receiving end of the CCP's crackdown on dissent. It was not long ago that your organization was sanctioned by the CCP, used as a scapegoat for the Hong Kong protests, even though there was no longer an IRI office in Hong Kong. But I point out that this crackdown is a reflection of the weakness of authoritarian regimes. They can be threatened by the mere existence of NGOs that promote freedom and democracy. I'd consider these sanctions against IRI as a badge of honor and a symbol of the strength that the ideas of IRI provide to the world. In addition to partnershiping with like-minded nations, the United States has got to continue to work with organizations like IRI to combat authoritarianism and to promote democracy throughout the world. The U.S. must always remain a champion for freedom, a defender of those who stand for democracy, for freedom and equality for all. So thank you for your dedication to this important work and to securing freedom's blessings for people around the world.
Thank you, Senator Romney. I hope you all agree with me that this has been a most inspiring evening. Tonight's speakers and honorees, through their actions, make the most powerful case possible for optimism about the future of democracy in the world, despite our troubled times. In the long run, it remains true that aggressive autocrats are no match for freedom-loving peoples. I hope you will leave this evening, as I will, with renewed appreciation for the importance of IRI's mission, this National Endowment for Democracy family mission, empowering global freedoms, sometimes unlikely champions. You've seen several of them tonight. Our guests tonight have shown that while authoritarians may project omnipotence, ultimately they're no match for the courage of ordinary people who stand up and demand a better future for themselves and their children. And that's what continues to motivate all of us at IRI every day. Thank you so much to our speakers, to our supporters, to all of you for making this such a memorable evening, for making all of IRI's work possible. We're very grateful, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much for being with us, and good night.